Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for asking me.
So welcome to Christine King, who is one of our award-winning authors of historical romance, Regency. So what we're going to talk about today is your writing, your books, and a little bit about how the COVID situation and the lockdown in the last year has affected things.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Do you want to start off talking about your when did you start writing and how did all that come about?
Well, I've always loved writing, right from when I was a child. I used to make up stories for my little brother and frighten him to death sometimes, as you do with little brothers. But I was always really interested in English and history at school. And I always used to get top marks in the written work and passed the O levels, no problem with English language. I just loved writing. Always wrote lots of short stories, and when I was very young, I used to. I had a couple of short stories accepted for a magazine which no longer is with us, sadly. It was called Fab 208. It was very big in the early 70s, and I had a couple of short stories accepted by them. But then I sort of stopped for a while. I got married, and work and marriage and other things got in the way. So it was a few years later that I started writing again. I just had the idea for some characters rattling around in my head for weeks, and I'd go to bed and I'd be laying there and I'd be thinking of all the adventures that these characters would get up to. And in the end, it got so bad. One night, I just got up, switched the computer on, and just started writing. And within a couple of hours, I'd written the first chapter. That's how it started a few years ago. Yeah.
So, what was your first book?
The first book was called Stolen Innocence. I wrote it 10 years ago. I put it in for a competition, didn't get anywhere. And then the following year, I sent in to the same competition run by a company called Piatkus Entice, which was part of the Little Brown Book organisation. And what they wanted was the first two chapters. You had three categories: historical fiction, contemporary, and supernatural. So obviously, I'm a big fan of historical fiction, so I sent in my first two chapters. Forgot about it. A few weeks later, I got a phone call at work from the editor of Piatkus Entice congratulating me and saying I was shortlisted and my book had been picked for the Romantic Fiction Award. But it was going on their website, and I had to, and people, the public, were going to be voting for it. So, of course, I then rallied all my friends and family and sent messages on Facebook saying, vote for me, vote for me. And then a few weeks later, I had another phone call saying, congratulations, you've won. But sorry, in the meantime, I had to go on the radio and tell them about my book and tell them about myself. And that was myself and the other two finalists from the other two categories. And then I had the phone call to say I'd won, and I was invited down to a ceremony in London where I had to go and accept my award. And I went down there, got my award, and met lots of really interesting people. Met the editor of the Piatkus Entice, who was hosting the table and who was looking after me for the evening. And I said to her, really, I said, I know I've got all my friends and family to vote, but how did I win by much? And she said, oh yeah, you won by miles. She said, even all your friends and family voting wouldn't have given you the votes that you got. So I was really, really pleased and chuffed. And then the hard work started.
That was The Blade and the Dove.
The Blade and the Dove, yes, that was my very first published novel. Unfortunately, it was only ever published in e-book format, but I'm still getting the royalty checks to this day for it, so it's still selling well. And apparently they sold the rights to be published in Turkey, because apparently the Turkish people love historical romances, which was lovely.
You followed that book up with another two.
I've since written two further ones. First one was called The Echoes of the Stones, which basically was 2 stories in one, because it dealt with past lives and reincarnation and a little bit of supernatural thrown in, and then followed by Smuggler's Moon, which was again another historical romance. And I've since gone back to my original story, Stolen Innocence, and I've practically rewritten it, and I'm just reading through final edits now before I send that off for publication. So that would be book number 4. Yeah.
And the Smuggler's Moon, that's set just on the coast south of
It's
here.
set in the northeast coast, from Alnwick in Northumberland down to Scarborough in North Yorkshire. It's basically set around Whitby and Robin Hood's Bay, that kind of area, which had a very rich historical smuggling past. And I love doing all the research and looking into, what actually happened, because the northeast smugglers, unlike some, as in Cornwall and the southeast, were not wreckers. They didn't summon boats and people to their doom. They were just literally smugglers, avoiding the revenue men. But yeah, I loved writing it. I loved doing all the research for these books.
And I know that before lockdown, the past couple of years, you started doing events locally, because you did some with us.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
kind of response did you have from people locally? I mean, we did an event in Scarborough and an event in Stockton.
Yeah.
I know you've done sort of library talks. And when a book is set locally, do you get a different response from people locally?
I've done a few book signings, and I've done talks, and I've been invited along to talk at various other events. And because it's set locally, I do get a lot of local interest, and a lot of people are really interested in it. And I went on a couple of times. I've been on the radio with the now sadly deceased Julia Donaldson. Yeah, she was a lovely lady, and she was very interested in the local authors and really promoted the local art. She'll be very sadly missed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a lot of interest because it was set locally, and I was in a bookshop one day doing book signings, and this man came up and talked to me for about half an hour about smuggling, and telling me where to look for the caves, and he'd be quite happy to show me around. It was really interesting. Yeah.
So what it's Regency, isn't it? You tend to write
Regency, yeah, it's early 19th century, 1800s. The current one is set just after the Battle of Waterloo, and I do include a scene from the battle in the book. So yeah, it's about 1815, 1816 Regency times.
So what is it about that period that you like?
I don't know. Perhaps I was just I was a big fan of Georgia Heyer when I was growing up. Read all her books, all her stories. Jane Austen, obviously, I read all her books, and it was just something about the period that appealed to me. I lived down in the southwest for a while and went to visit Bath and the Royal Crescent and all the pump rooms and everything. I was just I just felt so much at home in those places. Perhaps I'd lived there before. I don't know. But yeah, there's just something about that period that absolutely fascinates me. I'm about to binge watch Bridgerton on Netflix, because that's set in the same kind of era as I like to write about, and from the look of it, it's the same similar sort of story that I would write. Yeah.
Brilliant. So how has the last year affected sort of your writing? I mean, obviously we can't go out to any events. That's all.
No, that's the only problem. I love going to events, and I love the meetings that I used to go to. But basically, I've found it a bit difficult to write anything new. I've written short stories, but I've been concentrating mainly on rewriting and editing the book I've already done. When lockdown first happened back in March last year, it was great because I was at home for 3 full weeks, and I was able to really get on with it and get it all done. And I wrote a couple of short stories in that time, and I was just on a bit of a roll. But then my employers decided that we were key workers and we had to go into work, which was, I found it a bit scary. I was a bit anxious, to be quite honest, but we went back to work, and they've managed to work it so that we can work from home a couple of days a week. So that's not been too bad. So, but as far as the writing's concerned, when obviously can't go out very much in the evening, so my editing and everything else has come along quite well. As you know, I've done a couple of short stories, but I'm really eager to get started on my next book. I've got the idea, it's all up there. I can't write any notes down, but it's all up there, and it's about a character from Echoes of the Stones. It's about one of the characters in that has grown up, and the book's all about him. I've written the first chapter, but I can't go any further until I've finished editing this one.
And the short stories, you're one of our Harveys.
Oh, I love Harveys, yes, yeah. Yes, I did one for the volume 4, that was about a serial killer who got his comeuppance. And then the last one I did about a ghost pirate, that went into the pirate special. And I've got a few more as and when you need them.
Brilliant, because as well as the sci-fi, fantasy, steampunk, we love horror stories and ghost stories of all.
I've got a few ghost stories. I sort of say mainly go for ghost stories rather than horror. I've done. I used to belong to some writing groups as well, and what I really loved about the writing groups was that we used to pick a different genre every week and do a short story for that genre, and supernatural ghost stories, that sort of thing, came up very often. So yeah, I've got quite a big back catalogue of ghost stories that I could work on and provide them, make them suitable for a Harvey publication in the future.
Brilliant. So you kind of answered my next question, the last question already. So what you're doing now that we're in a third lockdown?
Oh yeah. Well, today I'm working from home. I'm finishing at 3:30, and I try to. It's funny, but I tend to do writing on an evening between sort of 6 and 7 o'clock. And I try to do a little bit then and a bit at the weekend. I'm not as prolific as I used to be, because I used to be really dedicated. Every night I'd be doing it. But because I've just about finished I've finished editing the book. I'm done, ready for next time we meet up, and I can hand it all over to you. I'm rereading it. I'm just rereading it chapter at a time, just to make sure I've got because I think when you do your own editing, you go word blind and you can't see any mistakes and where you can improve it. So that's why I really appreciate having an editor, like you said yourself, who can spot the mistakes and put me right. But yeah, I'm quite enjoying rereading it at the moment, because I've been working on it for so long. I haven't actually sat down and reread it from beginning to end. But now I have. I think, oh yeah, I quite like this book.
And then on to the 4th book after that.
Yeah, on to number 4. I haven't got a title for this one, but it's going to be set slightly later. I think it's going to be set 1820s, 25, going on to 1830. So the Regency's ended, but so it's a different king on the throne. But it's a continuation. I don't like trilogies or anything like that. I don't like the same characters over and over again. But what I do, I've picked a character from the Echoes of the Stones. He's called Joe, and he's grown up. He's the adopted son of the hero and heroine of Echoes, and it's about his story. So I've had to set it obviously like 15, 20 years in the future from where that one left off. Yeah. They will get a mention, but the majority of the book will be about him, and his adventures and where he goes.
That'll be the 5th one, won't it? The one you're doing now is the 4th, and then
yes, that's number 4. So this was number 5. Like I said, I've already done the first chapter, but I don't want to go any further until I've got it all worked out in my head, who's going to do what and where is he going, because I'm going to get him to join the Navy and go off, and he'll be fighting pirates and catching smugglers, but he's going off to join the Navy, but he's in disgrace. So
Brilliant. Well, that's lovely. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Writing in your books, and we'll catch up soon.
Yes, lovely. Thank you very much, Julie. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.